And welcome inside to the opening drive. Nick Kosko, Mike Antosiewicz, here with you every Monday morning, 8 to 9 a.m. We're still debating if this is going to be the last show of this semester. We might be. Are you around next week, Mike?
I'm around, yeah. What date is it? I don't even know the date.
What's today? The 11th? So the 18th next week. All right, so we'll have one more show before the end of the semester and before we go home for winter break, of course. Lot to do today. Rutgers Wrestling will lead it off, and we'll talk some MLB as Giancarlo Stanton was just traded to the Yankees a couple days ago. Big blockbuster in baseball. And, of course, we'll talk about the NFL, and I have some very depressing words to say that Carson Wentz, the MVP candidate for the Philadelphia Eagles, my Philadelphia Eagles, could be out for the season with a torn ACL he suffered in the exciting win over the LA Rams yesterday, and boy, it was a back and forth game. It was a seesaw affair. My emotions were running high, and they still are today, knowing that he might be done for the year. Best case scenario for me, he's out a couple weeks, and he'll be back for the divisional round of the playoffs as long as they get a first round bye. But I digress. We'll get into more of that later. And I'll try to keep it together for you folks out there, at least in the first couple of segments. All right, Mike, we'll start with Rutgers Wrestling, as we always do with Rutgers Sports. They lost to Iowa on Friday. We were on the call for that one. It was an exciting match, at least in the first half. But by the way, for those of you who can't see us, obviously, we're on radio. Mike was just looking at the TV, and Le'Veon Bell's injury last night. He got his knee pushed in, and he somehow came back into the game, and he still scored like 2 more touchdowns.
That's amazing.
So I thought he was done for the year. So we'll get more into that later as well. But back to wrestling now, Mike. You look at this match from Friday, and Rutgers did everything that they needed to do in the first 5 matches. Nick Suriano
I was about to jump in there, but the first 5. Yes.
Of course, yes. Nick Suriano got the tech. Scott DeVecchio got a major decision. By the way, that was over Glenn, not Lowe. I said his name wrong the entire time. I said the wrong guy for Iowa, and that was a self-inflicted mistake right there. Then Mike Van Brill got a much-needed win, so they were up 12-0 after 3 matches. DeLuca went out and did his job. Only lost 4-1 to Sorensen, who's, aside from Rutherford, the best wrestler in that weight class. And then you looked at 157. There were issues with the weight. With Richie Lewis, he didn't get back down to 57. They didn't have enough time to have John Van Brill cut there, so they had to throw out Brett Donner. And this was the decision made by Coach Goodell before the match, and Donner ended up getting teched by Kemmer. I actually thought
he wrestled very well.
He wrestled as well as he could, considering Kemmer is a points machine. He didn't get pinned. He was fighting back. And, Mike, remember, we saw Donner almost took him down after he got out for 1. He almost went back in on Kemmer's legs, almost finished off a double. But it just goes to show you how good Kemmer is. But Rutgers,
and also,
in a nutshell, was they were in the best spot possible after 5 matches, considering they were up 12-8.
I think you're even understating it a bit, Nick. They had everyone agreed. The coaches, probably from both staffs, agreed.
I can't even understand. I said the best spot possible after 5 matches.
Rutgers had to win 6, and after 5,
they won 3.
They won 3. You knew that Gravino, no matter what, was going to win in 84 because that matchup was solid, and it came down to the reigning world champion coming back at a weight that actually was a little bit higher than it was that he wrestled at the World Championship. So you don't have to worry about cutting against a kid that was making his debut and also had 3 years less experience than he did on the varsity collegiate mat. And Joe Grello, 2-time NJ State champion, against a good wrestler for Iowa, Gunther, but get Grello, who was home at the rack in his gym, right? It was right there. And, the best spot possible means, like, they still had to take a shot and it didn't go through. Nick, they had the fate of the match in their own hands.
Oh, yeah.
They had nobody. They had to look to nobody else. They needed no breaks. And they just dropped it. They had the ceramic vase in hand, and it went poof, and
it's in a million pieces
and
now.
it's shattered all over the floor. And
I'll tell you what, they had it. They really did. And you look at it, 12-8 at halftime, as you mentioned, and of course Richie Lewis. You thought he had the advantage there, and that's the matchup they wanted. I mean, everybody was excited to see possibly Richie Lewis and Michael Kemmerer, which could be a tournament matchup in the Big Ten or the NCAAs, of course, later in the season if we get to that point. But Lewis stayed at 65 for this one, and as you mentioned, Marinelli making his varsity debut for Iowa.
He
is good. He is really good. He is really good, and he dominated when Iowa floored Maryland 2 days later, but he dominated again. He got a pin at 65. But Lewis had the advantage. I mean, Lewis has been here longer. He's more experienced. I mean, you just mentioned it. He went up against world-class competition and won a gold medal at the U23 World Championships.
And in freestyle, which is another thing that kind of gets me crazy. In freestyle, which means
you can't go out of bounds. Otherwise, you give up a point.
How could you not go out of bounds?
You need more action.
But yeah, there's more action. There's more takedowns in freestyle, and he was wanting for takedowns.
In this match. It kind of blows my mind.
I don't get. If he got beaten on bottom or on top, you would say, well, you know what? He just came back from wrestling freestyle. His top and bottom game isn't good right now.
Of course.
In neutral, he got beaten after winning a world championship in freestyle. Nick, I don't get it.
And you and I love Richie Lewis. We love how he carries himself. He has a swagger about him. He's a hype man. He's a showman. He's very aggressive. He wasn't any of those things on Friday.
Let me tell you what happened, because
he was out of shape.
He was out of shape. And you look at the pictures.
Dejected.
You look at the picture. I said this during the match. I said, Nick, he's walking around, and it's not a calm walk.
It's
not
that good walking around.
Right. This is what happened with Richie Lewis, or this is what I'm speculating what happened. He is the underdog, always been the underdog. That's always been his MO.
Now he's the favorite.
People underestimate him. And you know what? He was always a little weak. He wasn't strong enough. Now he's strong enough. Now he's getting better. Now he's bigger. And people still disrespect him, right? And and this is all before the World Championships. This is all what I'm talking about right now is Richie Lewis's situation right before the World Championships, right? He beats this kid Berger, how many times? 5 times altogether in his career?
I think 3 times in college, and then he beat him twice to win.
Yeah, so 5 times
the
altogether.
U.S. trials a couple months ago.
5 times altogether. They still don't put him behind Berger, right? He's disrespected. He wins the World Championships, Nick, and what happens? Intermat still has him as the 9th best wrestler in the country in that weight class. They still have him behind Tyler Berger. And we're looking at it like, oh, it's the same old for Richie Lewis. Still doesn't get enough respect.
Disrespected, of course.
But the fact of the matter is, that's our view, because we think the kid is a top 3 wrestler in the country, and he's not getting his respect.
Intermat thinks better than we do, because as a matter of fact, number 9 could be right now.
But it could be right now. But the fact of the matter is, in Richie Lewis's mind, that wasn't the situation. The mindset that transported him to the point where he won the World Championship, right, was being the underdog. And then he won the World Championship, and now he had to go out for the first time as a champion, as a person that, at least in one style of wrestling, earned recognition and claimed it and owned it, and he didn't have to share it with anybody else. And I think that's what explains a lot of the wrestling this week, because the wrestling last match, Nick, because as I said, on air, it didn't look like he was not wrestling well, but it looked like he was mentally checked out, or he was mentally frayed.
It really did. It did. It's a shame, because it was there. He had the match, and then of course Joe Grello had his match too. You look at it. He had a 3-0 lead, and he ended up losing 5-4. And I get the out of bounds call. If folks didn't hear it or see it. Joe Grello was fighting off a single leg takedown from Gunther for about a good 40 seconds. Both wrestlers' feet were out of bounds. So all 4 feet were out of bounds. Generally, that means, okay, stop wrestling, reset in the center. The ref didn't call that. I mean, it was quick, but the ref did not call it. And then Gunther proceeded to get the takedown. And then upon review, you saw all 4 feet out of the cylinder. But the ref's explanation to Coach Goodell, as he pointed out in the post-match presser, was Gunther's butt, for lack of a better term, was actually still in the cylinder. I've never heard that rule in my life, Mike.
It was like the football breaking the plane on a touchdown.
Yeah, so to me, at least in my personal time on this earth, watching wrestling, watching college wrestling, covering college wrestling, I've never seen that in my life. When all 4 feet are out of bounds, you're out, and you're going back to the center. So it was a missed call, maybe. Did Grello lose because of it? Partially, but you can't give up a 3-0 lead as well. He got taken down early before, then he got out, and then he got taken down again. Of course, the riding time helped out for Gunther, and that's why he lost. And then from there, you needed Gravina to win. And then you needed Mulligan or Gross to get an upset, and that just didn't happen. And they had a chance there. Here's more on 65 as we talk to Donnie Pritzlaff, the associate head coach, after the match. He had some interesting things to say about Lewis and where it went from there, and just kind of how 165 went down.
I thought our first 5 guys did the job that they had to do and put us in position to win the duel. And then, Richie kind of the match you could see the match kind of getting away from him, but he's scrappy and he's tough and he's always in the fight. And, we kind of thought maybe the momentum was going to swing back our way. And there's a couple issues with, the clock and the challenge and all that. So there were some breaks in the action, which, may or may not have favored us. I don't know. I'd have to watch it again and see where the fatigue level looked. And then, then the kid toughed it out. He's a tough kid. The kid's a good competitor. So hats off to him. He wrestled really tough and he got it done at the end.
He basically echoed our statements before. They got it done at the first 5 weights, Mike, and then it was there for the taking, and he just couldn't convert. And it's tough to say, but it is a shame because when you have a chance like that, Rutgers coming into the match ranked 16th, Iowa 7. You've never beaten Iowa ever. Now you're in the Big Ten. You were overmatched a couple years ago when they came to the RAC, and also the other year when they had to go to Iowa. But now when you have a team like this with a chance to beat Iowa, and I'm still looking at the TV screen. They're showing Wentz getting wheeled out of there, and that's depressing. When you look at this team now, Mike, they had the chance. This was going to be a statement win, and we projected it before the season that if they're going to notch a big upset and knock off one of these top tier Big Ten teams, it was going to be Iowa this year. Iowa. Not a depleted lineup, but not as strong of a lineup as they've had in years past. And this was their chance. And then Mike, we've been projecting it the past couple weeks too. Even without Anthony Ashnault, we're like, okay, Vandenberg will take care of business, and Rutgers is still set up to win. It just feels like a total whiff and a missed opportunity. And they got to take these next couple weeks and get ready for Midlands and try to get back on track because they have Ohio State and Penn State coming to the RAC next month as well.
Well, it's unfortunately it's not even that simple because the weights from 57 to 74
question mark right now
are all you have 3. Last year, at least there's only 1 question mark.
65.
This year there's 3. And I'm leaning towards keeping Van Brugge at 57, Lewis at 65.
That's if Van Brugge can get the cut. If he can cut down.
Oh, he could cut down. He did not have a. He could have cut for this match. He just didn't have the time. Van Brugge could cut to 57.
I understand that, but you also got to remember. I know Goodell, Pritzlaff, and all the coaches have strongly said that they don't prepare for March in December. They prepare for December in December. They prepare for dual meets and just the matchups. They try to win dual meets for the team. These are all about the team, and that's the proper way to go. In college wrestling, you need more of that. But in essence, you can't help but think what is going to go on in March for the Big Ten tournament and the NCAAs. Richie Lewis obviously has the potential to become an All-American. Is he going to have a better shot at 57 or 65? Same goes with Van Brugge. Is he going to have a better tournament season at either of those weights? Which weight will he have a better tournament? They have to think about that as well, in addition to the dual meets, and they can't play around with the weights too often. Because if you put Richie Lewis at 65 for most of the year, and then you're going to ask him to cut for tournament season, it's going to throw his game off. And he won't be prepared. He'll be wrestling heavier guys, but he won't be prepared for a slightly different style of wrestling at a lower weight. Same goes with Van Brugge if he bump him back up, or vice versa. I mean, it's almost like a lose-lose situation because you want to set up the right matchups for the remainder of the dual season, but then you want these guys to be in the best position possible to succeed when it comes to the tournament season. And I know that's still ways away, but 3 months is not going to be that much longer, considering how fast time flies in wrestling season.
But Nick, I'm sorry. This is where kind of like what matters is
what matters right now
when you make this
is doing
decision.
well in Midlands.
What matters? Who cares about Midlands? What matters?
It's
right
a good
now,
measurement, Mike. You know it's good. It's a good tournament.
Well,
you need these guys to bounce back, considering
Nick,
you had your first.
Nick.
Mike, I'm telling you right now, you need these guys to bounce back. That is a dejecting loss, and you.
No, you need these guys to bounce out.
But Mike, you also know in the back of their head, maybe not in the back of their heads, they can believe they can win everything. But we know, as just keeping this at almost a neutral view, they're not beating Ohio State. They're not beating Penn State. They might not beat Minnesota. They need to win some matches. They need to win at Midlands. They need to beat North Carolina and Hofstra pretty handily, and they need to wrestle well against these Big Ten opponents because they have a stacked schedule. And you need these guys they need to figure out the weights because you need these guys in the best possible position to succeed at the weights, and you need them to wrestle well against these big time opponents. Whether you're going to beat them in a dual meet or not, you need your best guys out there in the best weight for them.
Exactly. But
so I don't get what you're arguing.
Listen, they're not going to beat Ohio State. I
just said that they're not going to beat Ohio State.
They're going to beat Penn State. But you're talking about if you have Lewis wrestle 65, then he has to cut down 57 for tournament time. I think the question's much simpler than that. The question is, at which weight class right now, at which weight is optimal for Richie Lewis to wrestle his best, not in terms of the rest of the field. Let's not think of the field right now because you're trying to factor in the field.
I don't think it's 60. Well, if you're asking that question, I personally don't think it's 65, considering.
Well, my point is that, but that's the question they have to figure out. Let's not think for
but you also just can't.
Don't worry about the field right now.
But it's not the Richie Lewis show. It's not the Richie Lewis wrestling team.
At which weights Van Brill and Richie Lewis will wrestle
they
their
have
best
to. Well, they have to figure that out. I think it's Lewis at 57 and Van Brill at 65.
Yeah, maybe it is. Maybe
I personally think it is. Richie Lewis did not look up to speed. He's not. The dude is a strong kid. He's a freak athlete. All wrestlers are freak athletes. Richie Lewis is a freak athlete, and he's a strong dude. And I get he wrestled freestyle up a weight from his college weight, but that's also freestyle, as you mentioned before. A lot of takedowns, not a lot of top and bottom.
Richie Lewis, I think it's 57 too, Nick.
Richie Lewis
for his best, but and I think it happens that it's best for him also with the field. I do.
At 57.
Yeah.
So I don't get what we're arguing about then.
No, my point is just worry about right now where they wrestle their best, and let's not worry about the field.
Which in turn means you need to find out the best position, and you need to wrestle better. Because they have these big teams coming in. And we just said, they're not beating Ohio State, they're not beating Penn State. No way. But they need these guys, they need to be competitive against these teams. Whether they could lose 8 bouts in those matches, but those 8 losses need to be close.
Oh, yeah.
So it gives you confidence moving forward into the tournament season. It's a long season. But the loss, obviously, to Iowa is very dejecting, and it's tough to rebound from. All right, we're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we'll have baseball talk. Julian Jimenez will join us, WRSU alum, and also Rutgers alum. We'll give him some time to talk about his Yankees getting Giancarlo Stanton. Make sure to keep it locked. You're listening to The Opening Drive here on 88.7 WRSU FM and online at WRSU.org. Welcome back inside to The Opening Drive. Nick Kosko, Mike Antosiewicz here with you. 8:21. Getting some Major League Baseball now as Julian Jimenez joins us for the second time this semester. How are you doing today, sir?
Thank you. I'm doing fine. Pretty cold out there.
Yeah, no, it's freezing.
Yes.
It is freezing. Well, we brought in Julian again just to give him a little bit of airtime and also to air out his, I would say, good feelings now about the Yankees as we switch gears now to Major League Baseball. You know, you look at this, and the biggest news, obviously, is Giancarlo Stanton. He is going to the Yankees. And in my first reaction, of course, as a biased Red Sox fan, of course, I would say Derek Jeter is still helping out the Yankees, considering they traded Stanton. And they got who is Castro going to the Marlins? Is that the deal? So what's the official trade? It's Stanton to the Yankees. The Yankees are taking what, $265 of the $295 million.
There's $30 million going with to the Yankees from the Marlins.
Okay.
So Stanton and Jose Devers, Castro, Jose Devers, and I forget the name of the other prospect.
So Castro and 2 minor league prospects
Yes.
are going to the Marlins.
Who is actually Devers is actually cousins of
Rafael Devers for the Red Sox.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
All right, so there you go. All right, so at first glance, people are going to say the Marlins just got fleeced by the Yankees. But then I take my approach back to neutral, and I just think of it then I obviously take a look at it from the perspective of, okay, be a neutral journalist here. The Yankees, they were able to do it. They're like the Dodgers. They had a chance to do this type of trade because they had the ability to take all this money on. And people are going to say, well, the Marlins got fleeced because they didn't get much in return. They got Castro and 2 prospects in return, and they weren't one of the top prospects in the Yankees farm system. But when I look at it, Julia, I think of it as the Yankees were smart because they said, you know what, we'll take on almost the entire contract remaining for Stanton, which is still huge, by the way. The guy's going to be owed $26 million, $25 million every year until his final 2 years, where he's owed what, like $30 million each year. So I mean, and the Yankees can afford to do this because they have the money. And when you take all that money off the books for the Marlins, a team that desperately needs money and they need some kind of new direction, despite losing now their face of the franchise, you're going to do this deal because the Marlins are not going to get too much else from anywhere else. If they had traded him to, let's say, the Giants or the Cardinals, they had a deal with the Cardinals in place, but Stan said, I don't want to go there due to his no trade clause. He's allowed to do that. But they had a deal in place with the Cardinals. The Cardinals probably were going to take a lot of money, but you weren't going to get low-level prospects in return as well. But you weren't going to get a guy like Starlin Castro. Now that he goes to the Yankees, the Marlins need to get a good player in Castro, 2 minor leaguers, and they get all that money off their books. They already got rid of D. Gordon, who's going to the Mariners. That's more money off the books. And to be honest with you, I think they're going to trade Yelich at some point as well this offseason, get rid of him. So that's more money off the books, and then they have a clean slate. And then it's going to be a barren team, and they're going to be absolutely garbage next year. But you have all the money off the books. You can prepare yourself, develop some guys, maybe spend more money on the prospect side of it, just develop more prospects, and maybe hit a splash in free agency in a couple of years as well. But what I really want to get out of this now, your first reaction when you heard the news, and I mean, to me, this means the Yankees are obviously the World Series favorites going into next year. When you have Judge, Stanton, Sanchez, Greg Bird, Didi Gregorius, there's just so much to go around. I mean, what does this mean for the Yankees?
I mean, the first thing, this was the first piece of news that I woke up to that morning, and obviously ecstatic about it. But you wonder just how much of pressure is going to be created by this. Like, they just made the ALCS. They pushed the World Series champs.
Arguably, they should have went to the World Series.
Yeah, they pushed the World Series champs in Houston, the Houston Astros, to the Game 7 with the team they had. Now you're at a caliber player like Stanton to that lineup, and you wonder, okay, now what are we going to do from here? I know a lot of people, the first reaction was, yes, we're excited, but we still have to work on pitching. So my thing is, I don't think the Yankees are done after this. And everything I keep reading on online and on Twitter is that they still have money to spend. So it's gonna be there's still some pretty big pitchers out there that they can go after. So I don't think they're done, and it's kind of scary to think about that. You know, you wonder.
As in a trade or a free agent signing?
No, free agency.
So who are the big free agents right now that you think they would go after pitching-wise?
Right now, well, Yu Darvish is probably the biggest one out there. Jake Arrieta is also a free agent.
Oh, jeez.
Who's the other one that I was thinking? Alex Cobb is another one. So there's some arms out there that they possibly can go after. But it's definitely going to be fun.
It's going to be fun for you. I don't think it's going to be fun for anybody else in that division, considering they have to face Stanton 20 times a year. Mike, I know you've been wrapped up in your studies and, of course, Rutgers Wrestling, but Stanton to the Yankees, I mean, that's got to rub you the wrong way a little bit, considering I think you've told me just off air before that the Yankees basically just screwed the Marlins in that trade.
You know, I'm not a Yankees fan.
I know this.
But when I heard about the trade at first, I was in awe. You know what I mean? It was one of those things where, I mean, like, Donald Trump talks about the art of the deal. the Yankees won the art of the deal here. They used the art of the deal. I think you're absolutely right, Nick. Once you take a look back and you free up all that capital, you
kind of have to do the trade at this point. You had to do it.
It does make sense. I know it hurts the fans, but it does make sense. And listen, I'll throw another parallel, and I always like to throw parallels. European soccer teams do this all the time, Nick. They have one superstar. The superstar's probably responsible for like 60% of that team's production. But you know what, though? You sell that superstar for 100 million euros. You could bring in 5 really good players for 100 million euros. And 5 really good players are probably more productive than one superstar on a bad team. And I think it's it's the same idea here, right? It's the same type of strategy. One guy could carry you so far, but 5 guys, good guys, not superstar guys, could carry you further. And I think that the strategy for the Marlins is a good one, though. Maybe you could argue that they should have got a better prospect or something like that. But the Yankees, though, it was just masterful of them. They have money. It's not all about money. Cashman has been trying to have them retain some money in the last few years,
right?
And it worked now. All the money they've been trying to save, they put into Stanton, which is an excellent investment. I think they're favorites in the AL.
So, Julian, does this? I know the Yankees were big on possibly the upcoming free agent class that's going to include Bryce Harper or Manny Machado. Does this still mean they can get those guys? I've read reports that despite the fact of all the money that's going towards Stanton, there's a way for them to clear up more space in their salary. Obviously, there's no salary cap, but they can clear up more space on their payroll so they don't go too far into the luxury tax. That they could get guys like I think Harper might be out of the question now, considering he might be commanding upwards of a $400 million contract. But when you look at Manny Machado, is he still sort of a possibility for the Yankees, either via trade because he's a free agent next year, or would they go after him in free agency next year and be willing to spend more money?
It's going to be interesting. I think they might be sort of out of the Harper.
I think so too.
Just because
that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, and I think this move sort of reassures that in case we don't get Harper,
we have Stanton.
There you go. Which is not a bad,
not a bad trade. Not at all.
Now, as going forward with the third base position, Headley, for all due respect, is not the greatest player out there, but I think that they see
still Frazier, but he's going to be he's going to be DH right?
No, Frazier's a free agent, so
he's a free agent. Do you think they bring Frazier back?
I don't think so. I don't see that. I don't see that happening. What I do see sort of happening, playing out towards the middle of the season, is Gleyber Torres, their number 1 prospect right now. He came up as a shortstop, but a lot of scouts are saying that they see him playing third base eventually.
So would Stanton DH or play the outfield? How would they work that
I think they're going to alternate him and Judge between right field and
DH. Interesting.
Who
are the other outfielders right now? Greg Bird and
Aaron Hicks, Jacoby Ellsbury still on the team.
That's right,
and Brett Gardner.
Yeah, I was going to say Gardner too. And Ellsbury, do you think that's a contract they would shed, considering his injury history and he's getting older now?
I could definitely see them possibly trying to move him, either that or just simply cutting him and just eating the money.
Maybe he'll come back to Boston and grow his beard back out.
Just to clear up that roster space, sort of what they did with, A-Rod or something.
Yeah, would it be more logical to trade or cut him or Brett Gardner?
Who, Gardner or
Ellsbury? What would be more logical to get rid of? Would be a trade or just cut?
Ellsbury, I think so. And
is that more due to his injury history?
Yeah, and sort of guys like Brett Gardner and sort of Aaron Hicks sort of solidifying their position and their ability to play like every day. So I think Ellsbury is sort of the odd man out right now. At some point he was like the best. He would steal like so many bases a year, and he's sort of like shied away from that the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, I said it when he left Boston to go to the Yankees. He was still he was still a good player at the time, at least in his first year at the Yankees. But then he ended up struggling. But I said the Yankees are going to pay all this money for him. I love Ellsbury, especially when he was with the Red Sox and he was an integral part to their championship team just 4 years ago. But I said the guy had one great year in 2011 where he was an MVP candidate. Every other year he's been riddled with injuries. 2013, he kind of avoided that, and he had a pretty solid season. But other than that, he's been riddled with injuries his entire career. He is hit or miss with the bat. He's a speedster. He can steal bases no matter when. But the injuries and the inconsistent bat worry me for all that money. But, of course, the Yankees can afford to spend all that money. So you think Ellsbury could be the odd man out if they had to choose between him and Gardner?
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to happen this season. I think he's still through 2019. So the end of 2019. I think it was a 7-year deal he signed to in 2012.
Gotcha. Okay.
You know, I don't know if it'll happen this particular season, but let's say he's playing really well by July or something. Who's to say that they don't trade him at the deadline?
I got you. So last question I have here about the Yankees, and it kind of relates back to Machado now. The Yankees are just trying to load up and going all in now. It seemed like they were going to carry their youth movement and let them develop over a course of about 5-10 year period and see where that takes them. But they're going all in because they're going to bring in some superstars. I mentioned a guy like Machado, and as you mentioned, and as I think what's going to happen, they're not going to be in on Bryce Harper anymore. But Manny Machado could be a possibility. Do you think they go after him in a trade this season, or do you think they're going to kind of wait until he hits free agency?
I think free agency, you barely see divisional teams trade with each other, especially with star caliber players like that. I don't really see them trying to go after it during the season, but let's say he's going to command a like $300+ million contract, 10 years or whatever the case is.
So you think Machado's number is probably around 10 years, 300, 320, maybe?
Yeah, he's worth it.
Close to a stand contract?
Something like that, yeah, I'd say.
See, that's going to be really interesting.
Yeah. Somebody's going to pay him. That's the thing. Somebody's going to pay that kind of deal. I don't think he's staying with Baltimore. The chance that I think they let that chance slip by, like last season when they had the chance to extend that contract. They didn't do so, and now he's going into a free agent year. Okay. So,
he's going to command a big dollar.
Usually, you don't see players like of his caliber sort of
available
extend their contracts that last year of the contract. Does that make sense?
Yes, I do. So I think he's going to want to test it because Baltimore's been up and down. They haven't made the playoffs in a couple of years, so I think he'll test it. Bryce Harper, where does he end up if he doesn't stay with the Nationals?
Philly, maybe.
That's what I was thinking. Philly. I feel he's going to make a big push for him.
Yeah. I mean, now there was talks about Stanton going to Philly, but now that's out of the question, I could definitely see that happening. Maybe who's the other? Angels? I don't know. The Dodgers? I don't know.
That's great.
Or the Giants, maybe?
So do you think? So if you had to pick two teams as most likely landing spot besides Washington, would you say Philly and San Fran you were alluding to?
I would say those two probably right now. Philly more so. I'm more confident saying Philly.
They have a lot of money and they have some good prospects.
They
have some young talent like Rhys Hoskins, Odubel Herrera. I mean, they have some good guys. Last question, and we'll take a break and then move on to the NFL. Shohei Ohtani. It was always surprising that he wanted to be in a small market West Coast team. It was expected that he might go into the Mariners, possibly even the Padres could have used him. The Mariners seem to be the most likely destination for him, especially since they went all in and basically took on D. Gordon to try to give him a more attractive option, and they took in $1 million more of international pool money, which would have helped out in the Ohtani sweepstakes. But it wasn't really about the money. It was about the best fit for him where he was comfortable, and he chose the Angels. So it's going to be him and Trout in that outfield, and Ohtani's going to be pitching too. They signed him as a hitter and pitcher. Do you ultimately think this was the best fit for Ohtani, or you think they should have ended up going to a big market where he could have been thriving?
I mean, at LA, like it's a big market whatsoever. So.
But it's not the Dodgers. The Angels are the forgotten team in there because they're in Anaheim.
Yes, but I still think it's it's a pretty big market for him.
Does this help out Trout now to be more of a face of baseball, considering the Angels might be relevant now?
It helps Trout. It helps the whole team really. They almost made one of the wild card spots last year. They definitely made a push towards that. Now I think this sort of helps them put more pressure on making the playoffs next season. They still need a little help on pitching, but now you look at that lineup. They traded for Justin Upton. In the middle of the season, they have Upton, Trout. Pujols is still there. He's sort of the forgotten man, but he's still there. He put up.
If he can put anything together and be half of what he was in St. Louis, then they might have a shot.
And now Ohtani's coming over. It's going to be a transition for him, obviously, but I think he'll be able to adjust relatively quickly.
So last question on this. Would you, at least this is what I would have him do. I would have him DH maybe, let's just say he's going to be a starting pitcher and he's going to hit, which is what he wants to do. And if he's good at it, that'd be quite amazing. So let's say he pitches. I say he has a day off after he pitches, and then he will hit as a DH 3 days in a row and then pitch again. Do you feel like that's a logical way to go if you're going to manage Ohtani?
I'd say so. Yeah. You want to be.
Would you let him go a complete game ever if he's pitching well, or would you kind of limit? Would you kind of give him a cap on his innings?
If he does complete, a whole game, you're gonna probably give him an extra day off during the week. Maybe play 2 games, 3 games, whatever the case is. You definitely don't want to push him right off the bat,
of course. Because you don't want him to throw his arm out and then you still use that elbow torque on him while he's
eventually, what I do see happening is that he sort of turns into an everyday player and maybe shies away from the pitching.
That's interesting because people I've talked to that are into this, they maybe even see him more. He's going to transition to a full-time pitcher and not actually hit. But I think whatever he does, if he just focused on one thing in Major League Baseball, I think he'd be pretty good at it because he's tearing up Japan, hitting. He rakes the ball and he's a tremendous pitcher.
Do you think that the Angels sort of secretly asked them, secretly sort of signed him to be a full-time pitcher eventually and not so much a hitter?
I really have no idea. Honestly, he's an experiment type player. I think he's a really good player, but I think he's more of an experiment. I think they're going to do as much as they can to try to have him pitch and hit at the same time. I mean, who knows? He could. You could do some really interesting things. He could be hitting if he doesn't become a starter. You could have him DH, and all of a sudden, if you need a reliever in there, the guy can throw heat, can throw about 100 miles an hour. He said, hey, Shohei Ohtani, go into the bullpen, start warming up the arm. You're not going to hit the rest of the game, but we need you for 2 innings in relief, throw some gas, and we'll win this game. So there's a lot of possibilities. I'm going to root for the guy. I would love to see somebody of his caliber make that transition from Japan to the majors and be able to do both. That'd be great for baseball. But it'll remain to be seen. You rarely see something like that happen, but he could be the exception. You just never know.
Yeah, it's gonna be exciting. I think he's the last the last player that to have this much hype. I think is Ichiro coming over.
I think
Yu Darvish was a big one.
And you look at guys like Daisuke and Tanaka, who were great pitchers over in Japan, and they had the hype. Obviously, Daisuke ended up flaming out after a couple of years. Tanaka's still hanging in there. Yeah. Yu Darvish has been pretty solid throughout the year, but he might be the most hyped Japan prospect since Ichiro.
Right?
I think so. With the amount of hype he's getting, I think so. We're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we will wrap it up with the NFL, and I got to go into depression mode as now I have to talk about Carson Wentz as I am impatiently waiting on an update and his MRI to just confirm already. I at this point, I'd rather not be left in limbo. I'd rather have him get it confirmed that he does have a torn ACL, but I don't think anybody wants that. Hopefully he's out for a couple weeks and he's back for the division round of the playoffs, but it's just tough to watch. All right. On the other side, some more NFL. You're listening to The Opening Drive here on 88.7 WRSU FM and online at WRSU.org. Welcome back inside The Opening Drive. Nick Kosko, Mike Antosiewicz, Julian Jimenez in studio with us today as well. 8:43, we'll finish up here now. Take up to 9 o'clock with some NFL talk. And it was actually a wild weekend. If you were watching those early games, we had some exciting early games. The Panthers won a thriller over the Vikings. The Bills and Colts played in the Snow Bowl in the blizzard out in Buffalo, and Buffalo won in overtime with a Shady McCoy touchdown. And they're still alive for the playoffs. There were some good games in the NFL this weekend. 4 o'clock, Seahawks lost to the Jaguars on the road, and there were some scrums after the game. You saw some good football on Sunday. There was some good football. You can go back to Thursday. The Falcons beat the Saints. I'm rolling down some of the scores now. The Packers with Hundley won on the road. It was in Cleveland, but they won on the road in overtime. What else? The Lions won a close one on the road against the Buccaneers. They're still kind of alive for a playoff spot. What else is going on? The Broncos beat the Jets 23-0. The 49ers beat the Texans, which is kind of a little surprising. Steelers that was a great game last night. I watched most of that game last night. The Steelers beat the Ravens 39-38, and now they are 11-2, so it puts the pressure back on the Patriots to win tonight over Miami.
Oh, that's going to be a challenge.
That's going to be that tough for New England. Just fantasy implications at this point. But, gentlemen, the lead story of the day, and it actually revolves around my team, the Philadelphia Eagles. They won a thrill yesterday, 43-35 over the LA Rams. It was a high-scoring affair. It was on the road for the Eagles. They are now 11-2, tied for the best record in the NFL, back as the number 1 seed in the NFC. And they beat a great team on the road, and they clinched the division. They are going to the playoffs for the first time since 2013. That was the last time they actually won the division as well. So it was all well and good, but the big story is Carson Wentz out of the game with an injury, possibly a torn ACL. It will be confirmed today when he gets the MRI, but that's what the team fears. He injured it as he dove into the end zone for a touchdown. He got sandwiched. His leg got crunched. Usually ACL injuries look worse if it's a non-contact injury or his knee just twisted the wrong way, but he got slammed. So there's a small glimmer of hope that he might have just partially torn it and he can rest and recuperate for a couple weeks and be back for the playoffs, but that's my best-case scenario, and it could be wishful thinking as I'm still just frantically waiting for the results of this MRI. And if he is out for the season, that is going to be the biggest blow of the season for the Eagles yet. I mean, they lost Aaron Sproles in week 2. They've lost Jason Peters. They've lost Jordan Hicks. They lost special teams ace Chris Maragos. I mean, they've lost guys and they've rebounded, but it's very tough to recover if you lose your MVP franchise quarterback. If the guy was easily an MVP candidate, he broke the record for most touchdown passes in a season in Eagles history with 33 through 4 yesterday against a stingy Rams defense. So Wentz 33 for the year. I believe only 7 interceptions. And he was on his way to possibly an MVP season. I would say upwards of at least 40 touchdowns on the year. The guy was playing out of his mind. It's just so dejecting. I mean, not only as an Eagles fan, where it's so tough to swallow right now, but as a football fan, for this league, with so many injuries this year, you see young stars go out like just in quarterbacks. Deshaun Watson, his rookie season with the Texans, he was lighting up the league. He got crunched. I mean, he tore his ACL in practice. It's probably even worse. You didn't even see it, and you feel so bad for the kid.
He didn't score a touchdown on that play either in practice.
Yeah,
at least Carson Wentz scored a touchdown on the way out.
That insult to injury, that touchdown was negated by a phantom holding call.
Oh, was it actually?
Yeah, and then here's what's amazing actually, because Wentz, he's so tough. He stayed in for 4 more plays. It got called back. He's limping back to the huddle. Didn't say anything. Next 2 plays, Doug Peterson obviously saw there was something wrong. Called 2 straight runs. They got down to about the 2-yard line again. So it's 3rd down. He's in the shotgun. Wentz steps up in the pocket, fires a pass to Jeffrey. It's missed. It's 4th down. They're down by 4. You would think they would take the field goal there. But Peterson's like, you know what? We're going to go for it here on the road here. We're going to go for the touchdown. They did. Wentz had about 6-7 seconds to throw. Great protection. He didn't really move around the pocket, but he fired a laser into the perfect spot right on the hip of Alshon Jeffrey, who somehow clung it to his thigh right about probably a couple inches from the grass, and he held on for a touchdown. And that was Wentz's last play. He still managed to fire a touchdown 4 plays after the fact that he might have torn his ACL. That shows that's toughness. That's grit. He's filling out for his team. The problem with Carson Wentz is he sells out all the time. He's gotten better this year with sliding and protecting himself as he's run the football. So it's been tough. It's been really tough to watch Carson Wentz go down with this injury. It's been tough to watch him this season when you think he might not get back up. It's so dejecting, and now the Eagles are in a position where they need Nick Foles to start possibly the rest of the season, and then now football has lost yet another star. Guys, I just want to gauge your reaction on the immediacy after the injury. To me, obviously, even though the Eagles won yesterday in the thriller, I was just so dejected, and it's so tough to watch.
Well, if you look at the Minnesota Vikings, right, that's evidence right there that although your quarterback goes down, Your season's not over. Now, the Vikings situation is different. The Vikings weren't as reliant on their quarterback. But nonetheless, it isn't like the Vikings are an average team. The Vikings are an elite team, not in the NFC, in the league right now.
It's a great defense.
So
and they lost yesterday.
Yeah, if you look at the Vikings, if you're an Eagles fan, you should look at the Vikings and say, listen, it's a shame. I'll wait to see what the final announcement is, but there's still some hope, even if it's worst case scenario for Wentz. Which, by the way, even if it's worst case scenario, it doesn't seem like it's going to be like a Teddy Bridgewater injury, which is going to be affecting his career over the long term.
Oh yeah, I mean he tore his ACL, he tore the MCL, and he basically shattered his knee.
Now the second thing, which I think is troublesome for me, as a football fan, is that the NFC this year is it's just amazing. I've never seen a
so banged up, and it's so wide open now.
Yeah, it's so wide open, but it's so competitive. I've never seen an NFC. And Aaron Rodgers is going to come back, and
he's probably coming back this week.
He's probably coming back this week, and Hundley put that team in a perfect position.
They need to win 3 in a row, and they might sneak in as a wild card.
Yeah, they might sneak in as well. Really, really, really interesting things happening in NFC, and it's just a shame because having Wentz in there would have just, between Breeze and Newton and now Wentz and now Goff is starting to pick it up too and
possibly Rodgers in the playoffs. Maybe Russell Wilson.
Possibly Rodgers, Russell Wilson,
or Matt Ryan.
Matt Ryan. It is unbelievable the amount of talent that's in the NFC this year. Talent at the top that's in playoff contention, and the fact now that Wentz in here, and now there's another question mark thrown into this. It's going to be crazy, but still, I would have preferred Wentz in there. I just think it would have been more interesting, been more explosive.
Yes, Mike, I would have preferred Wentz in there too.
But on the other hand, look at it. It's another question mark. It's more you don't know what's going to happen. It's more of what the guys in Vegas.
It really is. It's wide open.
I think that this creates more pressure for the Eagles to get one of those first round buys.
Without a doubt. They need that. They need to play as least amount of playoff games as possible while still winning. If you can catch my drift, which essentially means getting that bye. They have a chance. They play the Giants this week, and then they play the Raiders. For all we know, 2 more wins, and they're 13-2. That could wrap up the first round bye at minimum. If they have a first round bye, they are in position to have a chance to go on a run because of the defense. And Nick Foles knows the offense. Peterson has coached him before. Nick Foles has had a great season before. Now that was even under Chip Kelly back in 2013 through 27 touchdowns, 2 picks. He led the Eagles to the playoffs that year, and for a fair argument, he left the field with a lead against the Saints in that first round a couple years ago in Philly. There's a chance here. I'm not saying they're going to win. I'm not saying they're as big a favorites now to win the Super Bowl, but they still have a chance to get through the NFC. Because the NFC is just so good. You don't know what's going to happen. But the Eagles do have one of the best defenses in the league. And with Nick Foles running the show, you're not going to get what you have with Wentz, but you still might get decent quarterback play. And they could have had Chase Daniel or even Matt McGloin back there.
Matt McGloin.
Yeah. Just look what happened to the Raiders last year. Lost Derek Carr. They had McGloin and a rookie Connor Cook, and they were like, all right, where do we go from here? Connor Cook ends up starting, and he had no shot in the first round of the playoffs against the Texans. Otherwise, if the Raiders could have been a Super Bowl contender last year, they could have been at least in the title game against New England last year. So this is what that reminds me of. But, Julian, I think you're absolutely right. This just puts the pressure on the Eagles now to get that first-round bye. And if they can get it, they're in a good position. But then they still need to run the table in terms of they need the defenses to play even better. And they need the run. They need the run game more than ever now. They have good running backs. They have Jay Ajayi, who should have been getting the ball a lot more yesterday. Corey Clement's a nice change of pace, and they need LeGarrette Blount to score on the goal line. They need the running game and the defense to really step it up now.
Well, now this might actually increase the workload of those running backs now.
I think it will.
Pour more of pressure for them.
I think you're going to see a lot more Ajayi, and then you're going to need that's where the rotation is going to be interesting. But Ajayi should be the lead back, but they're going to need they're still going to need the rotation now. Considering they're going to want to take pressure off Nick Foles when he can make some throws. He made a great throw yesterday. I don't know if you saw it. That third down throw to Aguilar, perfect throw to the only spot where he could get it, and that essentially clinched the game for them. But they're going to need more defense and more running game in order to possibly still run through the NFC and get to the Super Bowl.
I know that the news hasn't broken out yet, but what's your best case scenario to what happens?
My best case scenario for Carson Wentz, he's out till the divisional round, and that's when he can come back. My best case scenario is that it's partially torn. It's something that you can rehab, and that he'll be back for the second round of the playoffs as long as they get the first round bye. And I will remind some folks, Phillip Rivers played in an AFC Championship game against New England back in 2007 when the Patriots were undefeated. Phillip Rivers played on a torn ACL that entire game, and they still played it kind of close.
So it's doable.
Will Wentz do that in only his second year and jeopardize a further injury? I don't know if he'll exactly do that. I don't know if the Eagles will want him to do that. But if Wentz says he wants to go and the Eagles say, you know what, it's up to you, this is your risk, maybe they would do that. If it's torn, you can't do that. But if it's partially torn, he could play on it after rehabbing, then I say you take a chance because
but remember what happened to RG3?
But it's
I was just thinking that. I was just thinking
and his
that.
career was screwed up
Because he came back.
Yes.
Yeah.
If the injury's at a point where it's not severe enough to warrant surgery in the immediacy, maybe you try to rehab it and then let him play. But you have to limit his mobility. And I know it's very tough to say that to Carson Wentz, who thrives running around and gets outside the pocket. But if you're gonna have him play in a couple weeks in the playoffs, if he's good enough to go, if the injury's not severe enough, then you have to fix the game plan and tailor it to Wentz's strengths in the passing game in the pocket. And you need to get more of a running game. And you need your defense to step up big time. But right now, what I'm forecasting, my best case scenario is not going to happen. It's going to be the Nick Foles show moving forward. And if Carson Wentz is going to be involved in a Super Bowl victory this year for the Eagles, he's going to have to do it from the sideline. In fact, I would give Carson Wentz a headset and make him an extra coach. That's how smart this guy is. Do that if he can't play anymore. But it's such a shame for the league, such a shame for the Eagles. It's rough. It's rough. But the NFL is wide open now. It really is. The NFC's wide open. The Eagles and Vikings are still the top two teams. Saints and Saints and the Rams are right there. Panthers, Falcons, Seahawks, Packers looming in the hunt. It's tough. It's tough to project. The AFC, it's easy though. AFC, I have New England or Pittsburgh. I'm leaning towards New England. If you guys had to pick a Super Bowl right now, I'm going with New England. I think I have to go with Minnesota.
Do you give the Chargers any chance?
I think the Chargers are the third best team in the AFC.
They're sort of
I think that's crazy.
They're sort of the dark horse team, I think. Here,
Mike, I'm not. I don't think I'm crazy at all. You look at New England, they're the best team. Pittsburgh gave up 38 points to Baltimore, but they're still a good team because they have Big Ben, Antonio Brown, and Le'Veon Bell. But after that, I mean, are the Jaguars really going to be that big of a threat in the playoffs? I know they beat Seattle, but it was in Jacksonville. They have a great defense. Don't get me wrong, they have a great defense. But are you going to trust Blake Bortles in the playoffs? Kansas City's reeling, even though they beat Oakland yesterday. They're not as good as they were.
No,
and the wild card teams right now are Tennessee, who lost yesterday.
Oh, they're terrible, Tennessee.
And either Buffalo or Baltimore.
Listen, the Chargers are better. It's not a crazy idea, but
Chargers are the third best team in the AFC.
My point is, it's like,
but it's gonna be New England.
Like in any other year, they're not the third best team in the AFC. This Chargers team is not that good that they should be the third best team. It speaks to the weakness of the AFC this year.
Of course it does, but they're hot right now. They are playing very well.
And let me tell you something about this Chargers team. They've always, this is the difference between Phillip Rivers and Eli Manning. I think Phillip Rivers is a much better quarterback than Eli Manning, but this is what has separated them in their careers. Manning has gotten hot at times and been able to ride it. Every year during the North Turner, Phillip River era in San Diego, which is now L.A., but during San Diego.
This is not North Turner's team, though.
No, but listen. It's still the same quarterback, though. That team started off the season terribly, and then they got hot, like almost halfway through, and then they were really scalding hot going into the playoffs, and then they dropped the ball each time in the playoffs.
I'm not denying that at all. I'm just saying that they're the third best team in the AFC.
No, you're right about that. It's relative weakness of the AFC, but I'm telling you, it's setting up for the exact same thing to happen as during the North Turner years, that they're hot in the playoffs and they can't capitalize on it.
I think that that's probably going to be the case again if that happens. I got New England, and I think I'm going to go with I'll go with Minnesota right now out of the NFC. I don't know about you, but
no Saints.
I'm going New England Saints. New England
Saints. I would love to pick my Eagles.
Well, if Wentz is,
But
we'll
Wentz
see what
not,
happens
yeah,
with Wentz.
if he's not in there, then you need that defense and running game to step up, and better hope Foles doesn't blow everything up. It's going to be tough. All right, thanks to Julian Jimenez for joining us today. Thanks for coming in, bud.
Hey, man, thanks for having me.
Always good to have him for baseball talk and his take on the NFL. Thanks to Mike Antosiewicz as well. I am Nick Kosko. Stay tuned for Jazz. Coming up next, you'll be listening to the opening drive here on 88.7 WRSU FM and online at WRSU.org.
Coming out